Well, I'm joined now on the programme by our correspondent in Rome, Seema Gupta. Seema, of course, I know you've been following this throughout his stay in hospital over the last few weeks and months. Nevertheless, a real shock, isn't it?
Yes, a complete shock, particularly when one considers that yesterday, Easter Sunday, we saw him there. Yes, it was hard for him to speak, but he clearly wanted to be with the faithful. It was quite unbelievable to see him, particularly after the service and after the Urbi et Orbi message, that he went on that open-top Pope mobile and was seen close to the faithful, picking up babies, blessing them, an image that really filled everyone's heart, not just the faithful gathered there, but even us journalists that have been following so closely his illness, his 5 weeks at the Gemelli Hospital, where we also knew from the doctors that he risked his life twice. He was close to death. They did say to him to take 2 months of a period of rest and recuperation, and it's only been less than a month. He was discharged from hospital on the 23rd of March, essentially. So it's only been less than a month, and yet now this news has come, which I think has been a shock to us journalists, but also obviously to the faithful around the world, the 1.4 billion Catholics that have followed his papacy for the last 12 years. The statement from the Vatican making it very clear that he passed at 7:35 this morning and that he had dedicated his life and all of himself to service to the Lord and to the Church. So that's the statement that we're getting from Cardinal Kevin Ferrell, who announced the death this morning of Pope Francis.
Yeah, we're just getting that statement coming into us, in fact, from the Vatican, Seema. I'll read it to you. He taught us to live the values of the gospel with faithfulness, courage and universal love, especially for the poorest and most marginalised, with immense gratitude for his example as a true discipline of the Lord Jesus. We commend the soul of Pope Francis to the infinite, merciful love of God, one and tribune. Seema, you followed, didn't you, the whole process of him being in hospital and the difficulties that he had over the last few months. Remind us of the health issues that the Pope had.
Well, the Pope, as a young man, even when he was in Argentina, had part of his lung removed. So that in itself would have been difficult for somebody who's 88 years old dealing with a double pneumonia. It was felt in sometime just in early February that it was clear that he was having problems with bronchitis and that it seemed to be getting serious until the decision was made for him to be admitted into Rome's Gemelli Hospital. Over 5 weeks, people were camped out, following his progress, the Vatican being very clear, giving the journalists briefings with very detailed information about his health situation. At one point, they even stated that he choked on his own vomit, something that one could not imagine them saying in the past when it referred to other popes. But in that particular instance, the Pope was very clear. I want to be transparent. He instructed the doctors, that's what the doctor said, to get all the information out to everyone to understand his situation. They checked his blood tests as well. At one point, he seemed to be slightly anemic, but at every stage, eventually, everything came back to normal. And then the decision was finally made for him to actually be discharged. But it was discharged with the idea that he had to have 2 months of rest and recuperation and to be convalescing. We've seen him, though, in the last few weeks, clearly a frustration for someone so dedicated to the church, so dedicated to the faithful, for him to be away from them at the time of Easter in this crucial time, a solemn period, an important period for the Catholic Church. And so he appeared occasionally at St. Peter's Basilica. And then, of course, we saw him in that audience on Holy Thursday. He made that visit to the prison in Rome. He said, I could not give that up. He did not wash their feet, but he was there in presence. And then, of course, we saw him not only appearing in the square to greet people on Palm Sunday, but we saw him on Sunday, just yesterday, a day ago, making that appearance in St. Peter's Square.
Quite a controversial pope in some ways, Seema. I mean, he really did try, didn't he, to mould the church in his own image and try to divert it and modernise it very much as well.
Yes, he did. I mean, he went in there to look at how the finances were being dealt with. He also pushed, if you like, his agenda. And his agenda was always about looking towards the marginalized, looking to help the vulnerable, looking to help migrants. Let's not forget, when he became Pope, the very first trip he made on becoming Pope was to the island of Lampedusa here in Italy, the island that has welcomed immigrants who make that dangerous journey across the Mediterranean to try and look for a better life. He has been very clear, those people who are fleeing poverty, who are fleeing persecution, it is part of the human dignity to look after those people. And it's that kind of papacy that he had throughout, whether it was his travels to Africa, whether it was his travels to Canada, where he also looked at the plight of indigenous populations. He was controversial for a lot of the more conservative Catholics, also in terms of how he responded to LGBTQ communities. Let's not forget that famous line, "Who am I to judge?" when in reference to gay people. He did make it such that priests on a case-by-case basis could actually bless gay couples, in the sense he was open to the idea if they wanted to come for a blessing. So very controversial moves. At the same time, he had to balance the different ideas within the Catholic Church. Clearly, his loss will be felt greatly here in Rome and all of Italy, but also around the world.
Yeah, interesting hearing what you're talking about there, Seema, because not only did he greet the faithful and give his traditional Sunday message on Easter Sunday yesterday, he also met, didn't he, with the US Vice President, J.D. Vance. And a lot of what you're talking about there, very much in conflict with some of the views and opinions that J.D. Vance has been expressing over the last few months since he came to power with the Trump administration.
Yes, I mean, one could, in some ways, in terms of policy and viewpoints, perhaps look at the Pope and other Vatican officials as being critical of the Trump administration, the administration that has come in with ideas of a crackdown on migration, deporting migrants, and also cutting funds to foreign aid, as well as to domestic or welfare programs. And in doing so, he still agreed. There was that very brief private meeting on Sunday with him and the vice president. It was a short meeting. They exchanged greetings, Easter greetings. In fact, the Vatican gave 3 Easter eggs for Mr. Vance's 3 children. It was a blessing to Mr. Vance, who is a new Catholic. He converted to Catholicism only in 2019. So despite differences, and that's how the Vatican has always been, to be diplomatic and to meet with everybody. And that's always been Pope Francis's line. When it comes to trying to resolve problems, dialogue is the way forward. And it's something that he has preached not just for himself, but also in resolving other conflicts in other parts of the world, whether it was Ukraine or, of course, in the Middle East and in the Holy Land.
Seema, just before I let you go, one last question I wanted to ask you. I know you've followed this many, many times before. What comes next? Because it's that whole ceremony that, I don't know, if you're a film grower, you've probably seen some of the behind the scenes in the recent film Conclave that was out, but which is very much a dramatic variation, of course, of what happens next. But it does give a lot of insight, doesn't it, into what is likely to go on behind the scenes at the Vatican now.
Yes, it does. Obviously, that was a popular culture moment explaining what goes on in terms of the behind the scenes of the Vatican. But right now, there you have a situation where the Pope has passed, and it's what the situation is called the sede vacante, or the empty seat. And then you have the camerlengo, who will be in charge, and in this case, it is Cardinal Ferrell, and they will decide what happens in terms of planning for the eventual funeral of the Pope. The Pope was very specific also. He left behind very clear details of how he wanted this funeral to take place. So there will be a period of mourning, and it's after that that eventually there will be a call for all the cardinals to come to the Vatican, all the cardinals that will be able to vote in a conclave. Those are the cardinals that are under the age of 80, and they will stay in and be under lock and key, if you like. They will have no contact with the outside world. And then they have to decide and vote to see who will be the next Pope. It is a process. And of course, the famous image of the smoke, the white smoke with the chimney over the Vatican. And if we see black smoke, that means they haven't made a decision because the ballots are burnt and the smoke comes out. But if there is a white smoke, that means it's habemus papam, Latin for we have a Pope. But for the moment, I think it's just an immense sadness, an immense emotional period for the faithful, for anyone who has followed the last 12 years of this papacy. All eyes on the Vatican, all eyes on Pope Francis and his memory. For the next few days, it will be quite a period of sadness.